It is 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, and I'm going to call this regular City Council meeting to order. I do want to thank everyone who's joining us this evening, and if Councilmember Strader would lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, both Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Peretti have asked to be excused this evening.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Strader to excuse Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Peretti this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. You good?
Aye.
Oh, you said aye? Okay. And then just for the record, I want to note for staff, we have Planning Manager Stallnecker, Interim Finance Director Robeck, Chief Hernandez, and City Clerk Tricia Summers. Moving on to our next item, it is citizen participation. Just a reminder that the purpose of the public comment period at this meeting is for those wishing to address the council on any matter. It is not intended for debate and discussion with the public. Please remember to state your name and city for the record, and we kindly remind you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Planning Manager Stallnecker, thank you. That's okay. Thank you. Okay, the first we have is Ms. Johnson.
Susan Johnson, Milton. Thank you, Mayor. I wish to thank Director Stallnecker and the framework representative on how they handled the question at the June 13th, 2025 study session from a council member about family and his view of vagueness as to the definition of a family. Too vague, no rules. Where in the law are we required to define a family? Washington state law states you cannot regulate the number of people in a household. Why the fear of extended families or friends living together in this current inflationary period in the U.S.? Many can't afford to live alone and may not have family in the area. What about non-married individuals? What about foster families who care for others' children, no blood? I was raised in a foster home and I didn't go to live with my parents till 7th grade. They are my family. So you don't have to have the blood. You don't do the knife thing and say you're blood. So loosen up with the so-called boarding house fear of non-blood individuals living together. Finally, someone recently sent out a letter to the state calling me bitter. Well, to me, accountability is vital when we are public servants. If bitter means standing for truth, honesty, and facts, then I guess I am bitter, but I will continue to work for the people of Milton as a non-elected person.
Thank you for your comments. Is it Pullman? Mr. Yep, Mr. Pullman, you're not.
I'm here for this, talking about the rezone, so this might not be the...
So you have two options. You can speak now, or you can speak at the agenda itself. It's whatever is your preference. You want to wait? Okay.
You could do both if you wanted to. You could speak as a citizen, and then speak to a particular agenda also.
Yes, if you have 6 minutes worth of comments, you could do 3, and then you could do another 3. Or you can, it's really whatever your preference is.
I'm kind of prepared to not, my wife tells me I talk too much.
Okay, so we will hold on.
So I'm kind of prepared not to do a lot of talking.
Okay.
I actually have paperwork I'll just hand to everybody and they can read it at their leisure.
Okay, so I'll wait. Before we take action, I'll ask if there's any public comment, and then at that time, just raise your hand, and then I'll call you up. Okay, you're welcome. And then the paperwork that you have, we'll just give to the city clerk, and then she'll distribute to city council as well. Well, we'll wait until you come up. Next, we have Mr. Franks.
Mayor and council members, my apology. I've grown accustomed to sign-in sheets at events. I did not mean to sign that sheet. My apologies.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, so that concludes citizen participation. Next is additions and deletions. Are there any additions or deletions from tonight's agenda? Wonderful. Moving on to the consent agenda, starting on page 3. I will take a motion to accept. Councilmember Cedar?
Move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker to pass the consent agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Okay, so we have a lengthy list of agenda items this evening. So the first one, 6A, is on page 21 of your packet. It is Resolution 25-1983 for the 2025 Murray disposal rates. I'm going to turn the floor over to Murray's.
Good evening. I'm Brad Smith, Assistant District Manager for Murray's Disposal, joined here by my boss, Stephen Hawkins, who's the District Manager for Murray's Disposal. I'll try and keep this as brief as possible, but here today just to kind of go over some bullet points for the upcoming rate increase, which is set to take effect March 1st of this year. And really just want to break it down into 3 components for clarity. So the first component is the annual CPI increase, which is outlined in Section 8A of the franchise agreement. The way we come about with this is pulling from the CPI numbers that is published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and specifically for the water, sewer, and trash index. So that is the reference that we utilize, and that number that we referenced was 5.02%. The second component is based off of the landfill disposal rates, and we received notification from the landfill that the published disposal rate was going up to $184.99 per ton from the current level of $174.84 per ton, and that is set to go into effect March 1st of this year as well. And then the final component, and this is covered under Section 8D of the franchise agreement, which is for unforeseen costs. And so I'm sure some, if not many of you in this room, are aware of the Climate Care Act that went into effect of 2021. And so, and I will preface this by saying that this is a component that will require a approval vote by the council for us to implement this, but we are seeking permission to pass on this rate increase, which I'm happy to say, because this was some that was approved for 2024. And just as a example, for the residents of Milton, 2024, the carbon fee that was passed down was 19 cents a month per customer, regardless of what your size of service was. And for 2025, that rate is actually going to be established at 16 cents a month per customer. So that rate actually came down. I would just say that that was a initiative that no one going into this Climate Care Act, no one really knew how this was going to work out. And the initial auctions that took place, which is done on a quarterly basis, went much better than the state anticipated. So there's some cost savings that is going to trickle down to the customer. So that's it. Any questions?
Okay. So I will need a motion to open up the floor for discussion. Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. Been here a lot of years with Murray, and everything I've heard, seen, and done by Murray, it was within the, you might say, the financial standings that you presented. And I think you've always done very fair, and what I read here, I think you're still doing it very fair. So I appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Whalen, did you want to make the motion to open up the floor?
I've just got to find the right page.
No, you're fine. Page 21.
I move to adopt Resolution 25-1983, authorizing the 2025 Murray's disposal rates.
Second.
Okay, it's Been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to adopt Resolution 25-1983, authorizing the 2025 Murray's disposal rates. Councilmember Whalen, did you have any additional comments?
No other than I think we've been treated very well by Murray's, and I look forward to continuing receiving that service from Murray's.
Councilmember White, did you want to speak to your second?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Cedar?
Hey, thanks for being here tonight. Always great to see Murray's up here. I echo Councilmember Whalen's statements. You know, Murray's has been a staple of the community. I appreciate that. I just want to point out what we're doing here. So my understanding is that Murray's is asking for the kind of the standard CPI increase as well as an additional fee for unforeseen costs. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that that's not required by what we have in place. Like, we're not obligated to approve that. So the motion that's before us is an additional cost that will be part of this going forward because of the reasons you pointed out, the additional fees that are that were unforeseen, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. I appreciate you coming here to explain that to us. That really matters. I of course will support it. Like I said, Murray's has been great, and I just want to be real clear about what we're doing here. Thanks.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mayor Potem?
Thank you, and I appreciate your presentation. I too appreciate what you do in the community and also sponsoring, pardon me, at Milton Days. The carbon tax, which you have no control over, I would like to hear, not from you, but I would like to at some point get, explanation to where those funds are going, because I know even in the past, when it was, introduced initially, and they, the representative from Murray's didn't know, it would be nice to know just where the money's, going, how is it being used?
Right. Well, it's kind of twofold. Part of it is, I guess, for a better choice of words, to strongly encourage those companies that are heavy users of petroleum to start converting to alternative sources, right? And so they kind of have this tier process where by 2030, they want emissions to be reduced to a certain level, and 2040 to hit that next tier. And by 2050, if memory serves me correct, they want it down to like a 95% reduction in those emissions. And then the second component is to support initiatives that will help counter or fight the emissions of carbon monoxide. So I don't want to say green belts, but green type projects that are natural in countering the effects of carbon dioxide emissions.
It's being used to make those things come about, however that is being done.
Correct.
It just seems very nebulous.
I can absolutely, what I can do is I work with a partner over with the Department of Ecology that is pretty moved into this. I can get, to the best of my ability, a list of projects that they're
Okay.
with this, and I can kind of email it out to the council if you guys would. But, because I'm with you as far as, I've never really looked into it, and I'd be curious of exactly where some of the funds that are coming from this, because it is a extensive fund that is far exceeded the expectations that it came in, so I'm curious where all that's going as well. So I can put that together.
Okay, it sounds like we're seeing eye to eye.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, this is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay. So it's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to adopt Resolution 25-1983, authorizing the 2025 Murray's disposal rates. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your time this evening. Moving on to our next item, it's on page 27 of the packet. It is Resolution 25-1982. It's an update to the employee handbook regarding the purchasing policy. I'm going to turn the floor over to Interim Director Robeck, and then following her review, I will need a motion to open up the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. New statutory purchasing requirements became effective in July of 2024, including new thresholds for competitive bidding. The attached purchasing policy section of the employee handbook incorporates these new thresholds and also adjusts the limits for purchasing approvals by department directors, the mayor, and city council. This item was previously presented for discussion at the January 13th study session. And I'd be happy to take any questions or comments after a motion is made.
Councilmember Strader?
So just to get this clear, the increase of from 25,000 up to 40,000, is that required by the state that we move this? Agreement?
Do we need to do a motion?
Yeah, we do need a
before?
motion to open up the floor. Did you want to make that motion
Oh,
or?
no.
No, okay. Does someone want to open up the floor with a motion? Councilmember Whalen?
To continue with discussion on this, I move to approve Resolution 25-1982, adopting the update. Oh, I think I got the
No, you have the right one. Yeah.
Employees Handbook.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Cedar to approve Resolution 25-1982, adopting the updated employee handbook. Councilmember Whalen, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We always see prices going up, but we always get from the city, you might say, the reasonable reasons the prices are going up and what we have to pay for it. I can't remember all of the times we've changed the value numbers, but it's been several different times. And for the council itself, with our finance committee, if there's a question about anything that's been done, that would be exposed and discussed within the finance committee. So it's completely open, but it gives the opportunity for the city to react to a higher dollar amount when necessary. And that saves a lot of time and energy within the city employee group, I suspect, to have that latitude. And with the way prices have gone up and changed, I don't think this is a very high number. I think it's a reasonable number for some of the things that have to be executed. And I have comfort with it.
Okay. Councilmember Cedar, did you want to speak to your second?
Director Roebuck, this is something that's required by state law to set these limits?
No, it actually is not required by state law. The state issued new thresholds. Previously, kind of from my perspective, one of the most important thresholds was they had required competitive bidding, which is kind of a rigorous process to go through. There's many requirements as far as like advertising and selecting the vendor and so on. That had remained for a city for our city. It is different for different cities of different populations and different types. But for our city type, that had remained at 15,000 for quite some time. So when the state raised that competitive bidding limit from 15,000 to 40,000, I think it's a prudent thing to incorporate into our purchasing policy because, like I said, in particular, the requirement for competitive bidding is fairly rigorous, and I think raising it to match that state level for the competitive bidding piece would increase our efficiencies and ability to purchase services and goods and materials.
So we have the discretion to set this at any limit we want up to the state authorized maximum, correct?
Yeah, for the approval portions of it, as far as what the mayor can approve, what a director can approve, what the council can approve, there is discretion there. I've modified, or we've modified the different thresholds with the same adjustments for those competitive bidding, or we tried to align those to match up to that competitive bidding threshold, which was part of the new Washington State regulations. But like I said, That's not required. We could require competitive bidding. We could keep competitive bidding at 15,000. It just, like I said, it's a lot of requirements, and I think it makes sense to at least raise that portion of our purchasing policy to require competitive bidding up to that new threshold of 40,000. Like I said, the approval limits, if the council chose not to raise those, that would be our discretion to do that. If that.
That does answer my question. Yeah, I don't have anything else. Thanks.
And did you want to answer Councilmember Strader's question as well?
Yeah, I think it was kind of along the same line as Councilmember Cedars, but those thresholds as far as what we are requiring to be approved by council or the mayor, those are our choice, and we can set those at any levels that we would like. Like I said, we tried to mimic those competitive bidding thresholds in the policy that we're proposing.
Okay, and just to get clarification, this would be the 40,000 bidding up to the directors would have this ability to.
Directors would have the ability that their ability to sign and approve invoices, we're suggesting to raise from 7,500 to 10,000. That also aligns with a federal, what do they call it, a minimum purchases threshold. And then we're suggesting that the department director, or we're proposing that the department director and the mayor could authorize items up to 40,000, but anything beyond that would need to be approved by the mayor, the city council, and the department director.
So, but those approving, these items would have to be within the budget, is that correct?
Yes, that is part of the purchasing policy. I think it's identified at each, in each section there. It does say if what the procedures are if it's not included in the budget.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. So kind of what you're saying in a nutshell is these changes kind of improve efficiencies,
Absolutely.
so things will pass through more
I-
quickly.
I believe so. Like I said, especially I know I've said it probably too much, but especially that competitive bidding. Because whatever we set our purchasing policy at, no matter, even if that's lower than the state's threshold for competitive bidding, we're required by the state auditor's office to maintain that. So if we leave our competitive bidding threshold at 15,000, which is lower than the new state requirements, we're required by the auditor's office to do competitive bidding for anything over 15,000. And we're also, that becomes part of our audit. They audit those purchases if we were to raise it to the new statutory requirements, then they would audit items over 40,000, and we would only be required to do the competitive bidding over 40,000.
That's what I thought, but thank you.
Councilmember White?
I was just thinking back over the last few years, how many times we've had something come to the council for approval, for oversight. And it didn't really occur a lot. Based on, I didn't have the data to go back through it, but if it had been 40,000 rather than the 25, would any of those items had come to council for oversight?
I believe there's still quite a few items that would have come to council. I mean, such as you really can't buy a vehicle for under 40,000 anymore. So all our vehicles come to council. There is still, I think that there would still be quite a few items that are going to come to council because prices are increasing. And I think that's part of the reasoning behind the state's increase of that threshold when it had been at 15,000 for many, many years. that they've now decided to increase their own requirements.
I just see the increase from 25,000 to 40,000 is substantial. And it seems ever so slightly, the oversight of this body is being transferred to the administration. And I think just for accountability by itself, that it should stay at 25,000 unless there's, like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is what would have been the negative result, or going forward, what would be the negative result to the city to have to come to council for anything over 25,000?
I don't think that there would necessarily be a negative result if it's the council's desire to keep their approval level at 25. We could still modify the purchasing plan so that competitive bidding isn't required until over the 40,000, but retain the council approval at 25 if the council so chose.
and
This
that's-
is just
yeah.
the original way that this is kind of what we thought made sense with the new thresholds that the state suggested. But as we've said, that portion, well, none of it is required, but that there's some discretion there. I would strongly support increasing the competitive bidding to 40,000. But if the council would like to retain approval at the $25,000 level, that's certainly a possibility, and we could modify this proposal.
All right, and I personally am fine with the competitive bidding being raised to 40,000, but I guess at this point, unless somebody could give me a better argument, I'm not in favor of raising the other dollar amounts.
I think what we're going to see is a lot more stuff having to come to council when it's down at 25. For instance, we're looking at some new doors. Does council really need to approve an invoice contract for a new door? Whereas if it was at 40, we wouldn't have to bring it to council, and it's just delaying the process. So I just think what we're seeing with the increase of prices, council will have to see a lot more contracts and invoices. The other thing is Interim Robeck hasn't stated, but one of the conversations we had is just keeping things similar and consistent. So where the $40,000 is going to be a threshold for multiple items. Now, if you take that back down to 25, it's another thing you have to go, wait, nope, those do have to go to council, even though we didn't have competitive bidding. So that's just my personal perspective. I really like the increase of the mayor's going from 7,500 to 10, because, I mean, I'm signing invoices for tablets. Why do I need to sign an invoice for water tablets? I mean, we know we need them. I trust the directors. So I think it's just, it's not to take any control or oversight out of council, because again, I send you every single contract that we have. It's just efficiency with how many things have to come to council. So that's just my
Yeah,
two
I'd just
cents.
be interested to know what the other council members think about it.
Yeah.
Well,
Any more, Councilmember Strader?
Yeah, I have the same concern of going from 25 to 40,000. I just, it just seems like a lot. And I understand that things have gone up, but I guess it's going to be more than up to the Finance Committee to keep a close eye on reports. So I have hesitation in that 40,000 is my concern.
Okay. Mayor Protem?
Thank you. So how many projects approximately, or you can give it percentage-wise, hit that threshold of 25,000 that would then have to go through the bidding process and come to us, as opposed to changing it to the way that is being proposed? Do you understand my question?
I think so. No, I should clarify, I'm kind of referring to the lowest levels. You will notice that public works projects do have a higher threshold and have had a higher threshold for both council approval and competitive bidding. So I'm really speaking to those lower thresholds,
Right.
that first one that you're looking at.
I'm just trying to grasp how many of those would come back.
Right.
I see what you're,
Yeah, I
what you're
kind of,
kind of implying or inferring, or not, anyway, saying is that then we'd be doing a lot of housekeeping voting to approve.
I think so.
Is that really the,
Just-
not to put words in your mouth, but that's the feeling I'm getting. And I guess that's where I said this brings in it brings in efficiency, which then things will flow a lot better and you'll get projects done more readily. Granted, there's trust involved, but, you know,
and the voucher report comes to every regular council meeting, so you are able to see anything that any purchases that are made. But to the mayor's point as well, just reviewing all of the invoices that do come across my desk, more and more and more are requiring the mayor's signature or required to go to council. And so I do think that eventually, if you all do not choose to raise it at this time, I think eventually we will get to that point.
I just don't like the idea of micromanaging. And it feels like if it's too low, then
Then you are taking things, I mean, just like all of our, for instance, software licenses. They're all, just one came across today that,
Okay.
has reached that threshold that hasn't reached that threshold
I mean,
before.
but of course, that's the crux of the issue is, because it is the council's responsibility to be overseers of the city fiscally. And that is kind of what we're doing if you're doing the lower tier, but is that efficient? Is that, just, like I said, micromanaging when you don't need to be doing that?
Nope, yep, it's finding that kind of sweet
Yeah.
spot there.
Correct. So I understand the change. There, I said it.
Councilmember Schrader?
Can you give a couple of examples of where this would be helpful for you as this employees, how this will help them make things more efficient?
Well, I think for sure the competitive bidding, I know I've said competitive bidding about 100 times tonight, but for sure that it makes the purchasing process more efficient. But the more and more things that go to council or are required to go to council, it is also an additional step for multiple, various staff members. That an agenda bill has to be done up, it has to be included in the council. So there's just additional work related to bringing every item over 25,000 to council. And not that's a bad thing, but as prices continue to increase, that workload will continue to increase along with it, I believe.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Cedar?
I'll just note my position, which is that we pass a budget every year. I'm always shocked at the lack of criticism over the large funds in the budget. And to nitpick over this change from 25 to 40,000, I think is disingenuous given the lack of oversight that we put into the specifics of the budget every year. So I don't know why we wouldn't pass this when we have a very responsible finance director who's proven herself time and time again saying that this will increase efficiency. So I support it.
Okay. Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you. And just to talk about it simply, if you don't mind. If tomorrow we have a catastrophe with a water tank, and I'm not saying that is going to happen, I don't want it to happen, but it's to provide the city with the services that they're expecting, something may have to be done immediately. And I think you need the latitude to have that. I think you need the latitude to have that even for higher amounts. I'm not going to say what I think they are, but to protect the citizens of the city of Milton and provide the services that are necessary. We've talked about changing our electric service, from what we have down there on Fife Way and so forth. I have no idea if that thing could ever totally collapse. But I want to have a way that the city can fix this to an extent. There might be more than that. But you have to have the latitude to be able to service the public with the needs that we have within reason. And I think the numbers that we're seeing here are within reason for expenditures necessary by the city before we can probably even get a council meeting going. Our next council meeting is when? I haven't got a calendar with me and so forth. It's 2 or 3 weeks, possibly. So I think the latitude needs to be there with reservations that everything that is done is shown to the public and shown to the council. And that's why we have a finance committee meeting to go over vouchers and over things and so forth. It's all open to the public eye. So I don't feel uncomfortable with the numbers that we're speaking about for the protection of the citizens of the city of Milton, period. That's why I will vote positive for it.
Okay. It is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Ms. Johnson, please remember to state your name and city for the record.
Susan Johnson, Milton, Washington. Every month you get the cost that's been done that month, the budget, and it's going to show all the costs being expended in that month. Things are going up, and they're going to go even up more this next year and the next year, I believe. So to protect, not to protect, but to lessen the time of staff and enhance the time to get good competitive bids, because it is so competitive right now. We cannot risk losing bids because we're only going to be at 25,000. Cars are over 40. And how many, we get police being hit by bad guys all the time, and the cars all over this country. So you have to be prepared. And I agree with Councilmember Whalen, and thank you for saying what you said. Time is of essence. We want to be conservative. We want to watch our funds. It's your duty to look at the budget every month and look at the whole budget. And if you see something out of line, then you bring it.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Ms. Whalen?
Just a quick one. Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. Is there a way for contracts to be made just publicly known? That was an interesting statement from Councilmember Whalen, because we don't see the contracts. It sounded like they're emailed to council members, but is there a way to just make that sort of data available? That's just a question. Thanks for the opportunity to question.
Any further questions from the audience, or comments, I should say? Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Cedar to approve Resolution 25-1982, adopting the updated employee handbook. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Carried 4-1. Moving on to our next item this evening, it is book, starting on page 51.
So sorry.
It is ordinance 2104-25 for our GMA comprehensive plan update. I will turn the floor over to our planning manager, Stallnecker, and after her review, I will need a motion to open up the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This has been an extremely long haul. Hopefully it has been a productive one. Hopefully it has allowed us to connect with our community. As background for those who may not all of it, the Growth Management Act of the state does require cities and counties to adopt a plan and conduct a full review every 10 years. This plan is supposed to look ahead 20 years and make sure that cities are thinking about what are the infrastructure, what are the utilities, what are the needs of the community, so that we're planning for that both visually, vision-wise, policy-wise, as well as financially. The city's periodic update deadline was December 31st, 2024. We are really close, closer than most cities. The Planning Commission and the City Council, along with staff and the consultant firm Framework, have been working hard to update the vision and policies, ensure the plan meets all the regional and state regulations, and address the desires of the residents. The sort of official kickoff started in 2022 with a public informational meeting. Since then, we have met with students at the high school, reached out to individual stakeholders, spoke with individuals at Milton Days. We've had workshops, planning commission, or public hearings, study sessions. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 29th, 2024, and September 11th, 2024. The City Council held public hearings on June 12th, 2024, and December 11th, 2024. At the last study session, there was nothing directed at staff, anything major. I think we had asked for consensus on some items, and those have all been incorporated. I do want to point out, and if you will notice, there's the recommended action, and there is an alternative recommended action. Last week, I happened to be talking with a resident on an unrelated issue, and I had mentioned that their property was in an area that was proposed for changing, and it came to light that there are 4 properties with 3 ownerships that did not get our letters. I did double check everyone else, all the other properties that we are proposing to change did get those letters. So I've listed those parcels here, and there is a sketch on the back. Hopefully that is enough. It's along Porter Way, next to just past the baseball fields, or across from the baseball fields. So the thinking from staff and Planning Commission was that they're currently zoned and designated light manufacturing. The recommendation was to convert them to residential, as there are houses already there. That's what they're being used as. And there is a lot of wetlands, and so feeling like the M1 zoning didn't ideally work, though M1 is adjacent. But after having talked to that property owner who wasn't aware of it, he did send in a letter that was forwarded to council that he did object to it, and staff does acknowledge that our intent was for everyone to have had opportunity to ask questions, learn about it, understand it, and stuff. And so that was not given for those 4 properties. So if council felt that with that information, that they would rather not change those properties, at least at this time, we've provided the alternative, which would be to adopt the comprehensive plan, but revising it to have those 4 parcels continue to be light manufacturing. So that's why there's an alternative. At this point, I don't know if normally we would open with an action. I don't know if you want to have them ask any questions on that specific, or if we want to go ahead and request a motion.
What would you be, Councilmember Cedar?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
I move to adopt ordinance 2104-25, adopting the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Volumes 1 and 2 with the following revision. 4 parcels ending in 450, 460, 471, and 472, as stated on page 51 of our packet, are designated as light manufacturing.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember White to adopt ordinance 2104-25, adopting the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Volume 1 with the following revision. Parcels ending in 0450, 0460, 0471, and 0472, as listed on page 51 of our packet, are designated as light manufacturing. Councilmember Cedar, did you want to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Plan Metro Stallnecker, I want to just say thank you for all the work that went into this. I think growth management acts are unbelievably challenging at the city level all the way on up. And I think that throughout this multi-year process, I feel like you've listened to council through thick and thin, and I feel like we've listened to the community, and there's been so many opportunities for us to weigh in. I feel like I've been heard, even if not everything I love is in there and not everything I want is in the future, but it's been a good process overall. Frustrating with these 4 parcels, but I appreciate the candid disclosure of that. I don't think it would be right for us to redesignate that, without proper notice and over an objection from the property owner. So, I'm proud of what we have, even if it has its flaws. So thanks for all your work.
Councilmember White, did you want to speak to your second?
Yes, thank you to Councilmember Cedar for the initial motion. I did go and speak to the property owners of all of those parcels, and 2 of them are currently being used as businesses, even though they are in a residential home, and 1 is a residence, and who I see is here and is about to give comment about it. The business owners obviously had a stronger opinion about how it would hurt their business and their future plans if it was downzoned to residential. And Mr. Pulliam, though he was surprised that he had this commercial designation, hasn't been precluded from doing anything that he's wanted to do over the years. So it would seem as though leaving the zoning the way it is the best option for everyone involved. I may be mistaken, but Mr. Pulliam can give his opinion when he comes to the microphone.
Any other comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree that they should be waived from having the zoning change, because just to me, out of the technicality that they never were informed that this was going to occur. So I'm all for exempting them from the changing in zoning. If I lived there, I'd probably feel the same way. And I'd be go, what, you're gonna do what? But no, I definitely am for this.
Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation on this. But I have just a question about locations. There's, if I'm not mistaken, there's 2 houses on Porter, a 3rd house on Porter and 7th, and 1 on Juniper? I'm just trying to get an idea of the scope of what we're talking about.
So one of the houses is on Porter, 2 of the houses are off of Juniper.
2 of them are off of Juniper.
Yeah, and again, with a comprehensive plan, because there's not necessarily a requirement to notify every property owner, but obviously that was the desire of council, that was the desire of planning commission, that was the desire of staff, and so that was our intent. It does, the northern portion does have a lot of wetland impact, so whether or not it could ever fully be manufacturing I don't know that would be the case, but staff recognizes that those conversations weren't able to be had with those property owners.
And one of the property owners is light manufacturing at the present time, correct?
All 4 of them presently are light manufacturing,
Light manufacturing.
even though they are being used as houses.
They're not. They're dormant manufacturing. They're houses, 2 of them. 2 are being used for light manufacturing?
My understanding was I thought they were all being used as houses, but maybe they have home occupations. But again, because we haven't, I know for sure that, again, I believe they all are being primarily used as residences, though they may have businesses with them.
Okay. And one of the reasons I asked for this and so forth, there's a property off of Juniper, way in the back of Juniper, at the end of Juniper, that is, I can't say it's light manufacturing. If you look at it, it's more building products on it and so forth than a light manufacturing on the property. So would that change what they can do on that property if it's recognized as light manufacturing? Or would it stay in its
Being-
present circumstance?
Being careful what I say on the record, I don't know that what they're doing is legally approved for that particular property. Because usually when it goes from a house to, not to say they couldn't make it legally, a legal business if they were M1, but I currently am not sure that, I don't believe we have anything registered to be there as a business, and so that's kind of a topic I will have, that is something beyond this, that I want to be careful because we're on the record.
So if their status is something other than what we would be appraising here, light manufacturing, if they're doing something different than that and have been doing something different than that, what becomes their status?
If what they were doing was legal, then they can continue to do it. If what they are doing was never legal, then like anything else, they would have to work on getting compliant. And I don't know enough tonight to be able to answer that for a specific property, unfortunately.
I'm speaking of a property that's the end of Juniper. It's not on Porter Way. It's down the end of Juniper towards 99 or towards I-5.
Right, and I understand that. I'm just saying, I can't tell you right now whether they are a legal business or if what they were doing was never approved. Unfortunately, I don't have that information. I can't tell you that. If they are a legal business, and again, currently all of those properties are M1, so the alternative action is to just keep them the way they are because we weren't able to have those conversations. So that's, I believe, that is the motion right now, is just to keep them the way they are. If they're doing something that was authorized, then they can continue to do that even if we change the zone or the designation. But if they're not, if they were never legally approved, it would be similar to like when we did the Ken's Pool. They started up without approval. We had to go through a process to make them approval. So I would have to look into that business in that property. So that I can't answer tonight.
Well, I support what's at the table, but I foresee problems with the way the property is being utilized. One of the properties is being utilized. The others are fine within this, but I think you're going to have a challenge here shortly. But I support the motion.
Councilmember Strader.
I'd like to echo what Councilmember Cedar said about everybody that was involved in this process. It's a massive project, and all of you need to be commended. And I just have a question on whether or not this section was it discussed at the Planning Commission level?
I believe that it was discussed early on in the workshops when we were looking at different areas that made sense. And that's my recollection, that when we were looking at that corner, we were looking at areas like, wow, there's a lot of wetlands, there's houses. In some ways, houses almost have more flexibility with wetlands. So I think that was the thinking of why that was the change that was recommended. Unfortunately, it didn't, when we went through and did our sweep of the addresses, and most likely that was me personally, I must have missed those four. And like I said, I went through and after I was having this conversation and I looked at all the other areas, and so everything else appears to have been covered, that somehow that little triangle I missed, and so.
So with this motion, then that just that section will be maintained at the
Yeah,
way
so-
it is now.
So by this motion, it means that those four parcels will stay M1, which is what they are now, that we won't be changing them. And then if at some future date, we decide we want to relook at that, we can. If we're fine to not mess with them at all, we can. You can, again, if it's something that we're like, we think it's valuable to relook at, but we would reach out to the property owners. We would have the conversations that we had with other property owners, or at least give them the opportunity. And they didn't have their opportunity. So I think this was a fair thing to do.
Yeah, thank you for that follow-up. I was just going to say, was there any thought to making it mixed use instead of?
That's an option too, is if, again, would it make more sense? Again, commercial it'd be a nice little train, but again, those were the things that, because we did have another area where we were proposing a change. Those community members did come. We were able to meet and talk to them, and it ended up being a different type of zone based on what that made sense in the conversation. So those are things that could be considered if we decide to move, like I said, at a future date, and we go through those processes
Okay,
appropriately.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, this is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Ms. Johnson?
Susan, can you point the microphone a little? I can't hear you.
Oh.
Point it a little closer.
Hi, my voice. I have Susan Johnson Milton. You're correct. This was a massive, massive undertaking put on us by the state of Washington. And all commissions are team members with the council. And we have always sent things to the council as our many discussions in our research, because we do our research along with the staff, in which I encourage, I assume some of you or all of you do your own research on the items on the agenda. And with that, it comes to you. And then you send it back to us with your change request. And we always honor, for me in my mind, what the council wants, because you're the final authority for what is happening in the state. We work for you, we don't work for us. So we're proud of this. It doesn't mean it's perfect. We haven't seen any RCW or any MMC come out perfect the first time, because it's only through experience that we gain perfection. And so it takes time to fill out what's right and what's wrong. But this is a very good step that will protect us against the state. There is a city, that's being sued in Washington State because the council decided they weren't going to do something, and they were sued. So that's the goal of all of us. We don't want to be in a suit for anything.
Do you want to still speak? Yeah, come on up. And just make sure you state your name and the city you live in.
Thank you for letting me come up. My name's Jerry Polium, and I live at 432 Juniper Street. I'm actually the last house on Juniper Street,
Okay.
past the big blue house that you're talking about. You can't even see my house. My
Yeah.
house is red.
You're down behind that.
I'm down behind that house.
And what I was speaking about is
Yeah,
more up
if you
front.
go any further, you're going to be in the swamp.
Thank you.
So anyway, I am for letting my property go back to residential. I've outlined some history about how this all started back actually in 2006. And I won't go into it in any depth, but I just wanted to say that I would like to get my property back to residential. And I'm also speaking for my sister. And I don't think that their two properties are part of this thing. They're at 427 Porter Way and 429 Porter Way. And I'd like to see their properties, if possible, put back to residential. But I will let you guys read this stuff. There's drawings and maps and all kinds of stuff on here. I won't get too wordy.
We appreciate you coming.
Should be enough for everybody.
Well, you still have a minute and a half. Do you have anything else you'd like to say? Okay.
It's pretty much everything right there. This actually started in 2006. And anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there two there? Yeah, there's. Any other comments from the audience? Come on up.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name's Joe Dominchik. I live at 811 Porter Way. So I own the two lots that front on Porter Way, one with the old house, I guess the 1927 vintage house on it. Then it's the vacant lot that's right at the corner of Porter and Juniper. So I bought those two lots back in 2007. as a residence, there's primarily, I wanted to live in Fife or Milton. I think I chose the right place in moving to Milton. Nothing wrong against Fife, but just for location. And the other thing was the zoning. I looked at it as an investment for the future with that zoning. Obviously, the hair's turning gray and it's getting thinner and thinner. So eventually, I'm going to sell it, and that was, again, a potential for investment. That house, let's see, I do own a small business. We used to rent a small space from Brook Lake Church on 356th and Pack Highway. And if you know where that little nice building is on the west side of 99 there. About in the early 2000s, that's when things seemed like started to go sideways with homeless people and other things going on. And so we had a lot of people coming in asking for money or assistance. And eventually I was going broke. I'm just a soft touch. And and so what I ended up doing is that house on Porter Way. It used to have an old garage on it. I believe the gentleman who owned it prior to me fixed up cars. But it was a garage that was kind of piecemealed with all kinds of different materials that he built on himself. So when I moved in, I intended it to be some more bedrooms, but with the change in Federal Way, I said, well, I'll just run my business out of here. And so that's what I ended up doing. So it's partially a residence, partially a business, just to clarify that. And so I thank you to Angela. I did happen to come and see her on another topic. For engineering we do. We have a current project in the city of Milton we're proposing. And I appreciate what she said. And she said, by the way, do you know your zoning's changing? And I appreciate that, letting me know. So, and I appreciate the council being fair and leaving it as is. So I'd like it to stay that way. And my neighbor contacted me today. It's that property in between. Obviously he would like to keep the same zoning too. He asked if I could just convey that to the council. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments from the audience? Okay. So it's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember White to adopt ordinance 2104-25, adopting the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Volume 1 and with the following revisions. Parcels ending in 2450, 2460, 2471, and 0472, as listed in the council packet on page 51, are designated as light manufacturing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0.
One more to go. Thank you.
Volume 1, well,
Volume 1 and 2.
and one and 2. Okay. So moving on to the next big chunk of your packet, it is on page 401. It is item 6D. It is ordinance 2105-25, the Title 17 zoning code and map update. Once again, I'll turn the floor over to the planning manager, and then I will need a motion to open up the floor for discussion.
Yes, so again, this is the companion. This is sort of the phase 2. The first portion is to get the comp plan, and then we are required to look at our development zoning code to make sure that those things are in alignment. And so this has been the second half of the year for the Planning Commission and for the city councils to try to go over all of those things. We did also try to incorporate other state regulations that had come in, as well as just things that we have identified at the staff level as we felt needed to be updated. There is also, the Planning Commission did also, going through this process, did identify other areas of the code, though not required to be updated, felt it was time to do some updating. So you will see those suggested on the 2025 work plan. So again, part of the process is to make sure every 10 years a city is looking at their codes, looking at their vision, and not just for state regulations, but also just for what needs to change, what fits, what's no longer relevant. And so it's been a great process, and we've identified things to continue to work on. Similar idea with the 4 parcels and 3 owners. So since we have changed the comp plan, those changes would also need to be made on the zoning map. And then just I was just thinking of a fun note is the size of the packet that our deputy clerk was very resourceful and had various departments printing packets so that they could get done as quickly as possible. So I appreciate their work to help get my stuff out to the council and the public.
And so the motion needs to be the alternate.
It needs to be the alternate
Alternative,
so that,
okay.
the alternative so that we are in compliance.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion? Councilmember Cedar?
I move to adopt ordinance 2105-25, adopting amendments to Title 17 zoning and the 2025 zoning map with the following revisions to the 4 parcels listed on page 401 of our packet, which end in 450, 460, 471, and 472, zoned as light manufacturing.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker to adopt ordinance 2105-25, adopting amendments to Title 17 zoning and the 2025 zoning map with the following revisions to the parcels listed on page 401 of our packet, ending in 0450, 0460, 0471, and 0472 are zoned as light manufacturing. Councilmember Cedar, did you want to speak to your motion?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Other than this makes sense to pass this one as affirmative because of the motion that we just passed. So yes, I'm all for that.
Okay. Any questions, comments from council, concerns? Councilmember Whalen?
This is a little bit of a side note to this, if you don't mind. And I like pictures. But could we get something a little more current? Google Earth? Yeah, I mean, I've talked with Public Works and so forth, and you almost get a real-time photograph of the particular area, because this is pre-roundabout on this particular piece of paper, and this is from 2004. Not sure about that, but there are just better ways to illustrate this so we as the council who may not be familiar with a particular area see more detail. And that's all I'm asking for. I support this.
Okay. Are you wondering?
Is that pictures, I don't know what picture you're referring to, I apologize.
Almost everything we see, if I pull back to a lot of pages here.
So the photos that we have, I believe are 2020 or 2022, something like that.
Okay.
But yeah.
I'll find it. We had a little picture on an item we just had going through. Let me just see it. You can get a real-time Google Earth picture for the particular area. And I think it would be a little bit more suitable for council or for anybody else who's looking at it to have something more real-time current to see. And that's all I'm asking for.
Okay, noted. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Okay, it is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker to adopt ordinance 2105-25, adopting amendments to Title 17 zoning and the 2025 zoning map with the following revisions for the parcels listed on page 401 of our packet, ending in 0450, 0460, 0471, and 0472 are zoned as light manufacturing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Moving on to our next item this evening. It is on page 517 of your packet. It is the 2025 Planning Commission Work Plan. I'm going to turn the floor back over once again to our planning manager, and then I will need a motion to open up the floor for discussion.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is the, as previously stated, the 2025 work plan. Items 1 and 2 are code text identified by the Planning Commission as we were going through the process that the Planning Commission felt they would like to provide additional updates to. Street parking and loading, it needs to be brought up to meet all of the new uses, as well as just, it's pretty outdated. Also, we discussed having some designs we have some design standards, mainly for the Uptown District, but we had talked about getting some additional standards and guidelines for things like drive-throughs, outdoor storage, outdoor sales. We have some new zones, and so the request from Planning Commission was to work on some of those and do some research on those. And then items 3, 4, and 5 are all code texts that are required by state law. Nothing too significant. So basically, as the first is this unit lot subdivision. Again, it's basically just some wording that needs to be added to the subdivision section. The idea being that we already kind of do this, but we've been using a binding site plan. The idea is whether it's if you did like an ADU or duplexes, or in our the houses that are behind the the post office, it's the idea that you're sort of, it's another version of being making condominiums. I won't try to say the other word. The idea is that you would, instead of just, normally a condo is the inside and then like the shared ownership is the outside. What they did with the townhouses behind the post office, again, this would basically be that process, just a little cleaner, is that you actually would get to own your house as well as maybe a little bit of the yard, but then you have common ownership. So if you had a house with 2 ADUs, you could actually sell the ADUs and you would have the equivalent of a mini homeowners association for the land around it. So it allows, it increases home ownership in a much affordable way. And so it's just basically some language that will be added to the subdivision code. Co-living, is I had kind of mentioned it last week, is that it is that idea of the old time boarding house kind of idea. It's actually though only required in the multifamily mixed use zone. So it's just another form of a multifamily type thing, but instead of having a full kitchen bath in your apartment, maybe you're creating little rooms that you have a shared kitchen, more dormitory-like. And so there's some language that we will add for that. And then we do need to review the critical areas. I believe I've been getting input from the various state departments, ecology, wildlife. And so I anticipate that can be done in-house. I'll take a better look earlier in the year, but we will just need to make sure those things are up to code. 6 and 7 are also items at the Planning Commission. They weren't necessarily directly from the GMA update process, but they were issues that the Planning Commission has requested for review. The first is landscaping. So again, feeling like we need to review that, review the tree code, as well as just landscaping in general. The other one was whether or not we wanted to review short-term rentals. I know that has come up with planning or at the city council before, and previously city council didn't necessarily want to move forward with having specific regulations, but but planning commission kind of discussed the fact that it does seem to keep coming up. So if there's that. And then 8 and 9 are just sort of placeholders. We're assuming that there will be refinements we will find as we go through the code in general. We also, I anticipate there will probably be some updates to the 2025. So basically we can do one update of the comp plan every year. So whether that is reflecting the 6-year TIPs and other plans that we adopt, as well as I'm assuming we'll still probably get some feedback from Puget Sound Regional Council and that will allow us to do such as placeholders for that. So those are the 9 items. That makes it a very busy year. If we get to them all, we'll have to kind of prioritize. So again, the city council can adopt as is, can subtract items, can add items. Thank you.
Do you need a motion to open up the floor? It's a really short motion. Councilmember Strader.
I move to approve the 2025 Planning Commission Work Plan.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Councilmember Cedar to approve the 2025 Planning Commission Work Plan. Councilmember Strader, did you want to speak to your motion?
I appreciate all the hard work that the Planning Commission and staff has put into this as well. I think it's a great plan, and we need to support it.
Okay. Councilmember Cedar?
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. So the Plan Commission is amazing. I can't believe how much they do. I just don't understand the short-term rentals piece. You said that it keeps coming up. Can you just tell me where it keeps coming up? Because when I look for a short-term rental in Milton, I don't think there are that many.
It was suggested by one of the planning commission members. One of the others said, yeah, that topic seems to, that it's been something that has been come up. I don't know. I haven't received any complaints about short-term rentals from anybody, but the idea would be, I guess, to put, there are cities who have some guidelines on do they require parking? Do they require, so we'd have to look at if there are standards we would want to do.
Yeah, I will pass this, but I would love to see the Planning Commission focus on things that are needed. There's a lot of issues that we always hear, like, oh, we're so busy, and you are. I'm not saying you're not, believe me. But that one, to me, I've never had a complaint about short-term rentals. I've heard about other cities having that problem, but those cities tend to be located in high-demand, touristy locations, which Milton, frankly, we don't even have a hotel, so I'd rather have a few short-term rentals than a hotel. Well, we have a motel. That's a different. Anyway, thank you for bringing this, and I look forward to 2025. Congratulations on getting a lot of stuff done tonight.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Yeah, this is quite a list. What do you want to? Oh my gosh, you're crazy. So this is a group effort coming up with this list, correct?
Yeah, I mean, staff's recommendation was everything but 7 based on either state law or input that I had received from the Planning Commission. And then number 7 was added at the, when they went to make the recommendation for the work plan.
Okay. Now, is the order that these are in, is that the order of priority?
No.
So how will that be determined? What metric or how do you go about?
Yeah, so some of it has to do with my what I can see as either priorities, so like, and also how much work is involved. So I suspect that the 2 state items, based on my understanding, it's pretty basic, straightforward wording that we're going to add. So I sort of see those probably coming early, where things like landscaping, design standards, the parking, those are going to be, I see them having a lot more input, because there's not necessarily you have to do this. It's more, does the Planning Commission representing their communities have preferences? What do we think? What are their directions? So I see those taking longer. Okay. And so we may, while I'm working on getting the 2 state ones adopted, maybe we're having study sessions on the others to get a better feel before I start writing amendments to the legislation.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious to see how you go about breaking down, what you're going to tackle first. I think you answered that question very well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember White?
I just wanted to echo Councilmember Cedar's comments with regards to the short-term rental. I personally haven't heard of anybody complaining about it, and if they are going to tackle that issue, I would hope that they clearly state the problems that they're solving for. I don't believe in regulation for regulation's sake. I believe in regulation to solve problems. So if I were going to decide the importance of these, I would put that one at the bottom.
Okay. Noted. Any other questions, comments? Okay, it is an action item. Any comments from the audience? Ms. Johnson?
Susan Johnson, Milton. Short-term rentals. Yes, we did discuss it. The question is, are they permitted? Do they go through the process of the houses being efficient with fire protection and other protections? People are renting them. Yes, we're not like the beach, and we're not like other places, but we are close to Seattle, and there are some. And it's not a complaint from citizens. It's, are we getting money for a business of taxes for the city? I don't think we'll get through all of these because these regulations, I mean, look how long it took us. We've never had a list, I think, with 9 since I've been on. So, and I rely on the staff to tell us what's important. Short-term leases can move to the bottom of the list, but it is something. Are we missing a tax opportunity? Are people applying for permits? Because we know in this city, there are people building houses that aren't getting a permit until they're reported. We know it's happening. So we really don't know how many short-term rentals we have in this city of the 3,350 some homes we have. So that's why it was put on.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Councilmember Cedar to approve the 2025 Planning Commission Work Plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Moving on to our next item this evening, it is on page 521 of your packet. It is an amendment to one of our professional services agreements. I'm going to turn the floor over to the chief, and then following his discussion or review, I will need a motion to open up the floor for discussion.
Good evening, council, distinguished guests. This is more of a housekeeping resolution that I brought before you. Nancy Shattuck has worked here, or worked for the city of Milton for about, since I've been here, 10 plus years as a domestic violence advocate. She provides great services to the city and to the victims needing advocacy in the court system. And so this is just extending her agreement because we had lapsed upon reviewing our contracts. We realized that we needed to refresh this agreement. And so I'm asking for action tonight for council to approve the agreement with the Domestic Violence Victim Advocate for Professional Services.
Councilmember Cedar?
I move to approve amendment number 1 to Nancy Shattuck Victim Advocate Professional Services Agreement.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to approve amendment number 1 to Nancy Shattuck Victim Advocate Professional Services Agreement. Councilmember Cedar, did you want to speak to your motion?
Just briefly to note that having worked on all sides, including as a victim advocate for a short time, a good victim advocate is worth its weight in gold. So this is great to know that we have someone that's well worth it on board. Thanks, Chief.
Councilmember Whalen?
Well, I thank you, and I thank you, and your recommendation is very heartfelt. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Okay, it is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay. So it's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to approve amendment number 1 to Nancy Shattuck Victim Advocate Professional Services Agreement. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Moving on to our last agenda item this evening. It is on page 525 of your packet. It is a interlocal agreement with Pierce County for specialized law enforcement services. Turn the floor over again to Chief Hernandez, and then following his review, I will need a motion to open up the floor.
Good evening, council and distinguished guests. Again, this is another housekeeping item. Every year, Pierce County raises the costs of their interlocal agreements with the different cities in Pierce County. And so they've sent the new price list, and what this does is it allows us, should the need arise, to be able to contract for services. As you can see, it's à la carte, and there are many services they offer, but it is just there as a last resort. I don't anticipate that we'll need to use their services because we already belong and have an ILA with all of the smaller cities in the county. But God forbid we ever get to the point where we need their services, we have the services available to us at a billable rate, which is on page 536 if you're curious about what that rate might be. But again, this is a housekeeping thing and brings us up to the current charge for services should we need those services.
Councilmember Strader?
Move to approve authorize the mayor to execute the attached ILA with the Pierce County for specialized services.
Second.
That was like a lot of voices at one time. Mayor. Okay, he's pointing, so I'll go with Mayor Pro Tem. It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the attached ILA with Pierce County for specialized services. Councilmember Strader, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, this is just another necessary tool for the tool bag for the police. It's absolutely necessary, so, and a good insurance policy.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm all for this. I've been here and we voted on this every year. And yeah, it's nice having that in your pocket, having a little backup. I go with this, and I like housekeeping. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, concerns from council? Okay. This is our last, oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Councilmember Whalen, I'm sorry.
A question and
Yeah.
so forth. And I know you've been here with us 10 years.
10 plus years.
And we've used these services to a fair extent, a small extent, a large extent. Good.
Luckily, we have never utilized these services, but we always just keep it in the back pocket, break in case of emergency type thing. But again, our small city partners, which we already have an ILA with, where we share resources amongst the small cities, has been wonderful, and we continue to do that. And again, hopefully, we never, ever have to use these services.
But an excellent resource to have. And thank you.
This is our last action item this evening. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay. So it's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the attached ILA with Pierce County for specialized services. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. So moving on to council reports, we're going to start with Mayor Pro Tem this evening.
Thank you.
Oh, I skipped, no, never mind, sorry. Go ahead, my apologies.
One thing I like, and I've, especially my wife enjoys it, that they've been proactive with laying down the de-icer, and boy, that helps a lot. So thank you. Too bad Director Madden isn't here. I could, tell him directly. And, going through the GMA, and I was, and the one thing that came up to me too is when it comes to growth, you really have to look at, especially in this regard, that, if you're looking at growth, you also have to know that and make sure that all of the infrastructure can grow with it. So that's, I shouldn't say concern, it's just, I want that to be kept in mind that, it's kind of like doing a pro forma statement for a company and they want to increase, their net profit by 3%. Well, there are a lot of other costs that are connected with actually making that at increasing that net profit. And this is the same thing. You get, so many more households, so many more people, and orders of magnitude, it increases. So going through this Bible, I appreciate the work that's gone into it, and I would hope that we really keep an eye on that and forecast and be able to make sure that we keep up to where we want to be moving the city.
Councilmember White?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Councilmember Cedar?
Thanks, Mayor. I do just want to say congratulations, Prime Minister Stallnecker. Job well done. There's a long road to get here. So thanks for all the work you did for that.
Councilmember Strader?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Whalen?
Only that it was a very good meeting tonight. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you. Directors? Managers?
Really
Chief?
quick. No, I just wanted to announce that our building inspector started last Wednesday? Thursday?
Thursday, I think.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Thursday. Last Thursday. And I want to thank council because we went the route of letting me do a building inspector. He's exactly what I was hoping for. He's got great experience. He has a great desire to do the classes and get the certifications to hopefully become a building official, which is, I think, what our desire is. I think he'll be a great, excellent fit. So I just appreciate the opportunity to kind of think outside the box for us, and I think it's going to pay off. And he showed up again to this week, so we're very happy. Thank you.
Right.
Good evening, council. Things coming down your way. We have kind of been anticipating that we might get a resignation / retirement from a sergeant in the Milton Police Department. And that sergeant has decided to retire, but not retire. So he's going to be leaving the Milton Police Department and going to work part-time for the city of Ruston, and that is Sergeant Hume. And so he's retired, but not really retired. And he has given us 2 weeks, and with that, I'll be drawing the next name off the civil service list to fill his vacancy. The 2 officers are currently doing well that are going through the field training. We don't anticipate any issues with them at the moment. We also have a position already in background to fill as people bump up from either corporal or officer into the sergeant's position, that we have an officer to backfill that slot. Officer or Corporal Sarf currently still is injured. We don't expect his return until March. He still, I don't know to remind you, during a domestic violence incident was injured. He had to have shoulder surgery and bicep repair after his bicep tore. And so he continues to rehab and is working in light duty in the police department. And other than that, I look forward to February and having our first public safety meeting. So we'll see you then. And certainly, if you guys have any questions in the interim, please feel free to give the PD a call and ask for me. The other thing is that we are currently still investigating a juvenile death of an individual that died in the city of Milton, a 17-year-old who attended Columbia High down there. And so we continue still to do that investigation. At this time, we believe it was natural causes, but we continue to do the investigation. But just in case you've heard through the grapevine, this individual was well connected in the community of a multi-generational community. If you want more information, you can certainly talk to me after the meeting.
Just 2 really quick things. One is I want to echo what many of you have already said this evening, and that is a congratulations to Planning Manager Stallnecker, but thank you also to Planning Commission and Council, staff, and actually our residents as well, because they attended meetings and showed up and gave input. I'm really proud that I think we're probably one of the first cities to get done, because every meeting I've been in with mayors, they're kind of just starting some of this stuff, and I'm like, oh, we're almost done. Like, it's exciting. So thank you, Council, Planning Commission, and our residents, and of course, Planning Manager Stallnecker for all the work. And then I just want to announce that it was a close race, but the events committee won the best float this year. So Got to be voting. You should have voted more, Councilmember Strader. I think it was only by a difference of like 8 votes. So, but council has won, I think, 4
Well deserved.
times. So events committee will, I'll notify them tomorrow, or they'll hear it tonight, because I told them I'd be announcing it. So congratulations to them. And you can start thinking about your float for next year to beat the events committee. So anything else this evening, Councilmember Whalen?
Just maybe an update on our traffic cameras.
Yes, we are working through the new legislation, which is going to cause us to have to do an amendment to our old ordinance that was passed in 2003. In 2024, they added some more conditions to the camera placement and doing more in-depth demographic studies to make sure that there wasn't a disparate impact to the different socioeconomic communities and individuals of color. And so that's one of the new things I've had to add to our camera placement, is providing this report that does a little bit deeper dive into the methodology and where our placements are. And we continue to work through it. The clerk of the court in Puyallup has already been working with the administrator of the courts. And these are some of the things that we've been asked to do, is to make sure that we're in compliant with the new legislation that came out in '24. And so I'm working through that on my end with the demographic report, and then I'm working with our city attorney regarding amending, and I will be bringing it back hopefully in the next 3 weeks back to council to make the appropriate amendment. It's just a few sentences that needed to be added to our current resolution. Nothing major, but again, continue to dig and get through the camera.
Thanks for the update. Thank you.
Anything else this evening? Okay, so seeing that all items have been concluded, I will adjourn our meeting at 8:37 p.m.